Good evening, everyone. This is Wayne, and this is the video version of the trade report for Wednesday, April 25th, 2018. Well, it looked as if the markets were going to continue down today, but they caught themselves and pulled themselves back up again. And into the extended session, several companies are reporting better than expected earnings, pulling the averages up even higher. We may be on the road to recovery. Stay tuned to find out more. Yeah, right. Greetings, everyone, and thank you once again for spending part of your day with me as we go over the events and activities associated with the financial markets. And today, I actually have some good news. And, wow, I even have a tone to associate with the good news. All right, well, let's just look at what we normally look at right out of the chute here, and that is the S&P futures, which looked like they were just going to collapse and add to yesterday's losses. And we got bought after we hit the lows. However, we started heading south again, and it looked like we might just have had a one-hit wonder with this move back up again. But then we started going higher, and we did a little bit of sideways action. And then all of a sudden, boom, we got hit to the upside, got sold back down as we decided to, as the market was going into the close, and then we got bought again. So now we're going slightly higher in the extended session, but oh my goodness, there is a lot of earnings to report tonight. So at this point, suffice it to say, and I'll just go over the averages right now. The Dow closed up 59, almost 60 points. The S&P 500 closed up just under 5 points. The Russell closed down just under 3 points. And the NASDAQ closed, I believe they actually closed lower. They were up for a time, but then they closed lower, about 3.5 points. So we had mixed markets in the great scheme of things. However, our markets are trading higher at this point because of several earnings reports. So let's get to those real quick here. And I first want to show you, pardon the black screen here, and just all sorts of suspense. I want to show you Facebook, and you can see here that Facebook is just absolutely going crazy to the upside here. It's up about $8 in the extended session, which is about 5%. So Facebook had great earnings, and the main thing we need to be concerned about is whether or not this move higher will actually hold into tomorrow's session. And that's a pretty decent consideration given the fact that Google sold off, Caterpillar sold off, Netflix has sold off after their astronomically good earnings. So it's been the rule and not the exception that good earnings get sold. However, this feels a little different. We'll see what happens. This could be the beginning of something rather remarkable. We'll see. The next one I want to show you is CMG. Yes, Chipotle Mexican Grill. We have not looked at Chipotle Mexican Grill before because that's on my do not trade list. However, when a particular issue moves as much as this one has, almost 10% in the extended session, you just have to look at it because of the wow factor. So Chipotle Mexican Grill up 10% in the extended session, adding to what could quite possibly be a very nice recovery for the averages tomorrow. Let's take a look at PayPal now. And you're asking me, PayPal? We haven't looked at PayPal before either. You're right. We're looking at a lot of issues because they're reporting earnings, and you can see PayPal is higher. They had a little bit of a rough day yesterday, as did most stocks. Went basically flat to lower today, but now in the extended session are getting bought. AMD is another issue that reported earnings tonight. and you can see it's just breaking out to the upside. Let's take a look at, let's see, I think it was, nope, I don't want to do that. Let me get that straightened out over here. And this one's actually lower. This is, I think, AT&T. Yeah, AT&T is getting sold. They missed. Yeah, AT&T not really going to be a market mover. Obviously, it affects the stock, ticker symbol T. But in the great scheme of things, not really looking at that as being a significant market moving factor. So at any rate, this gives you a flavor of what I'm looking at as we look at what's happening currently in the extended session. And are we still open? No, we just closed the extended session. So we didn't close the extended session, I apologize. Stocks are still trading, but futures are in their quiet time. There's a 1 hour period between 2 and 3 p.m. Pacific time where the futures markets settle, the indexes settle, and then they reopen again at 3 p.m. Pacific time, and that basically becomes the beginning of the next day's trade. And so for Thursday's trade, the markets will reopen at 3 p.m. And I do expect them to move higher. We've got a lot of reasons for that to happen at this point. Again, Facebook, Chipotle, PayPal. There are a number of reports tonight that were beats, and the market is actually respecting them. So when we have a market that is beginning to accept and respect the earnings reports that are coming, as opposed to defaulting to what they have done over the last few trading days as it relates to earnings reports, which has been sell on the news, there's a fundamental shift in the dynamics and the energy of the market. Now, yesterday it was said that the markets traded lower predominantly because the 10-year Treasury note found and went higher than a 3% yield. Well, today, same thing, went even higher. In fact, I think we put in a 3.03 print on the 10-year Treasury, and the markets just kind of crept to the upside. It doesn't take long for the markets to acclimate to a new normal. Whether or not they like the new normal remains to be seen. But because this is earnings season, because this is a market that is scrambling for, is looking high and low and in every deep, dark corner for a reason to go higher, it wants to be able to establish a sense of normalcy, of balance. And even when it's presented with dynamics like the 10-year Treasury going up above 3%, it's going to try to bring itself to a place where it's just going to make that a component of what it's going to be dealing with going forward and refocus on earnings. Now tomorrow, huge day of earnings tomorrow. We got Amazon and I think Microsoft is tomorrow. There's a number of large companies that are going to be reporting tomorrow. And if today holds with these like Facebook, PayPal, CMG, all going higher, if those higher prints remain higher tomorrow, we could really see a move to the upside tomorrow. It's what this market needs. It's what this market has needed for a long time. And it was beginning to get a little bit dicey watching all these venerable companies beat their earnings but get completely slaughtered the next day. Basically a buy on the rumor, sell on the news. So we're not out of the woods yet. We're never out of the woods. But at this point, we do have a market that has the very real potential of moving to the upside, of getting itself some traction so that it can establish a foothold and begin clawing and scraping and scrambling out of this morass it's found itself in, this sideways situation that has just absolutely, you know, I don't know what the right terminology would be, created grief for it, I guess. So let's take a look real quick at the ES here. I do want to take a look at the daily chart, however. So let's go ahead and pull that up. And there we go. And I've got all sorts of lines on this chart. And what I want to do is I'm going to just take all of these lines off of the chart because I just want to see it nice and clean here. So let's, okay, I need to be able to, when I start drawing my Fibonacci lines, I can really clutter up a chart, and you can see how it almost becomes impossible to distinguish where the candlesticks are, but I do keep track of them relatively well. But for the purpose of providing some chart analysis, I think it's prudent that I get rid of these and just basically have a clean chart from which to work. And we'll take this, remove that, and that should be the last Fibonacci that we need to deal with. Yeah, okay. So you can see how price came down and basically touched the 200 period moving average on the S&P futures and just bounced like a super ball to the upside. And this was what happened this morning. We had this big sell-off right at the very beginning, the first 15 minutes of the trading day. And then this technical 200 period moving average was just about touched, and we just started moving higher. And you can see we actually closed higher. Now, this candlestick pattern is known as a piercing signal. A piercing signal is a bullish pattern. And like all candlestick patterns, they require confirmation. So a move higher in tomorrow's session would be a confirmation. Now, we have a little bit of a squirmy situation here. We have a parabolic SAR sell signal here, but I'm not going to pay attention very closely to that, given the fact that we bounced up so definitively off of that 200 period moving average. Now, we're coming into a positive cloud configuration too. So price could very easily move up into that cloud. Now, we also, of course, have this configuration, which I have mentioned many times, called a pinch. And the pinch is like a magnetic attraction for price. Now, if we don't go up very high tomorrow and we begin moving like this, price could actually make its way to that pinch and then go definitively higher. But then we have this area right here, which is actually bearish. So unless we can move definitively above and maybe start getting some sideways action above this cloud and then start moving higher, we could find ourselves moving back lower again. There's so many potentials here. And earnings season, for all intents and purposes, at least for those earnings reports that really matter, next week is it. So tomorrow's a huge day, however. So we need to see how the market's going to treat today's earnings reports and then fold in tomorrow's earnings reports. And then Friday's trading is really going to be the tell for how this market is interpreting earnings reports and how it feels about itself going into the weekend. And then, as I said, we do have some very important earnings reports next week, not the least of which is Apple. So just so many things always at play in this market. There's a need to make sure that you're constantly in touch with and connecting to the market in order to feel its subtleties and its nuances and get a sense of when it's making these energetic shifts. And it made one today. So I am looking for the market to move higher tomorrow, provided that these earnings reports are actually going to be substantial enough for this market to feel like it it's time to recover. It's time to move higher. It's time to establish a foothold now and get going to the upside. There's no way to know for sure, but it's one of those, time will tell. I do not have a trade thesis for this market at this time. I still have on my hedge, and I'm long the DIA. I'm short the VIX. I'm actually short volatility, I should say. And I bought some Caterpillar today. So I have positions on that will protect me to the downside, but will also benefit me going higher. So the last thing I want to do is, once again, get over to the chart, and we'll pull up a chart of the VIX. Now the VIX did close 18 cents lower today. You can see, let me get this a little bit tighter here. You can see how we did go up. We challenged yesterday's high, and actually I think we went even higher than yesterday's high. Yeah, just barely. So we found a high of 1984, and then we came down. We closed lower. So this move higher in the regular session really was a definitive bit of price action that relaxed volatility. Now, will we continue lower? That remains to be seen. If I were to read this chart at this point, I would say there would be some stability, there would be some sideways action, but in all likelihood, we could actually find ourselves moving a little bit to the upside, which of course means lower prices in the averages. I'm not sure where we're going tomorrow, how the market is going to digest and interpret the earnings reports that it was given this evening, and the earnings reports it will be given tomorrow morning as well, and then what it will do with them. Markets want to go higher ultimately, but there are many opposing forces that create obstacles and energies that move in opposition to that natural gravity of the market to go higher. And we've had several of those lately. Are we past those now? I'd say there's a fairly good chance the answer to that question is yes, but there's never a 100% certainty. So we'll have to see what happens tomorrow morning. It wouldn't surprise me at all to wake up tomorrow morning and find the averages way higher. That would be what I think is the higher probability chance of tomorrow's trade. But again, I'm not going to adjust my portfolio with that being what I think to be the higher probability open for tomorrow. But we'll see. At any rate, that is the markets at this time. So we have a lot of action yet to go in the overnight session. With the earnings that have played out tonight, they will most likely have a positive effect on the European and Asian markets. So that could help bolster the US markets. But we also have an ECB meeting tomorrow, a European Central Bank meeting tomorrow, which may or may not affect our markets. But that's all about the European economy and whether or not their interest rates will actually go higher. That could definitely have an effect on our market. So with that, I wish you trade safe. Trade what you see if you choose to trade at all. Good night and good trading.